y'all. We are live once again. We are here to have an amazing and honest and truthful conversation with y'all today, as we always do. So, y'all know how technology is. Oh, hi, how you doing? My hair wants to say hi. You know how technology does, right? I need to know that y'all can actually hear and see me. I literally had to do a last minute switcheroo because it didn't go live on one of the platforms. So I honestly, genuinely do not know if y'all can hear or see me. So if y'all can hear or see me, please let me know that you are there by typing, "Hey girl, something." Give me a hey in the chat if you can see me on any of the platforms that we are on. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and we are also on LinkedIn. So if you can hear and you can see us, please, please, please let us know. I am beyond excited to be able to have an amazing conversation with y'all today. If y'all don't know me, hey y'all, hey Pam. Sorry, I got distracted, y'all. Got super distracted. Hey Pam, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for letting me know I am live on YouTube. YouTube loves me today. Thank you, YouTube. But for those of y'all who do not know me, hey y'all, it's your girl Heather Bird here, and I cannot wait to share so much beautiful information with y'all today. I have my crew with me today, and I'm gonna give them opportunity to introduce themselves as well. I see thumbs up on Facebook. Thank y'all so much for letting me know that you are here. But over the next probably like 45 minutes, sometimes we get into the conversation and it gets real juicy and we lose track of time. We will probably talk more about that later because we do this every single morning where we lose track of time, right? But today we are going to be talking about the inner critic, our inner critic, and how we have been able to overcome the voice of doubt. So if you know someone who needs to be in on this conversation, if you know a writer, if you know a painter, if you know, what are some other art forms? A sculptor, if you know a singer, if you know a musician, whatever, if you know someone who you know allows their inner critics to sometimes get the best of them, tag them, get them here in this conversation. We can see you all in the chat and we respond. We are in conversation with you. So you make sure you tag them, let them know that we are here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, Cassie, for letting me know that you can see us in the chat. Cassie said, "Hi, my MP family." That's Morning Pages family. Hey, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here with us. Y'all, I cannot wait for y'all to find out who is joining me today, right? So I'm going to let them introduce themselves because if y'all have been following us for, oh my goodness, this is the third month. This is the third month, y'all, that we've been going live. This is crazy. So for you, those of y'all who've been following us from the beginning, we went live every single Tuesday in August. Why, you ask? Because your girl released her 30-day journal for you all to get started in your writing journey. So if you see, I see you. So if y'all have a copy of Igniting Ink, let me know in the chat that y'all have this journal. Let me know if you have cracked it open. Let me know what it has done for you. But it is a 30-day journey. I see you, Jano. Uh-oh. Look at that. Word won't let you be great. But if you all have a copy of this journal, it has been absolutely transformative. It is a 30-day writing journey with affirmations, prompts, and inspiration for aspiring women of color authors. And we have been breaking it down in every single live that we have had, right? But in the journal itself, you all will be able to see that it is broken up into 4 weeks, right? And in each week, we focus on a different topic. So for the first week, within the 30-day journal, we start talking about what it means to cultivate healthy habits. What's up, FM Supreme? I see you over there on Instagram. It's really good to see you. Glad you were able to join. Week 2, we started talking about overcoming doubts and our fears. Week 3, we started talking about unleashing your story. So how do you begin to find the stories that you can write about? And then week 4, we started talking about embracing your unique voice and vision. If y'all have not caught those lives, look here, I'm gonna post it in the chat here. And Cassie, if you could do me a favor and grab this link and post it in other places. When I tell you these lives have been gold, They have been so good. And not only have they been good for the conversation, but some of the authors, some of them who are here today, had an opportunity to feature their work, right? And so y'all should definitely check out any past lives that we have done. But make sure y'all are in the room today. So, y'all, we have an amazing group of folks. I would love for my folks to introduce themselves. If you could let everyone know your name, pronouns if you choose, where your feet are planted. Shout out to Joan for bringing that to our space. And then I want y'all to answer the question or finish the sentence. I remember when my inner critic first appeared, right? So that's kind of like the starter line. I remember when my inner critic first appeared. And I want you to tell just like a quick story of when you remembered your inner critic first appearing, right? So again, it's your name, pronouns if you choose, where your feet are planted, and then we are starting off the conversation talking about remembering when your inner critic first appeared, and then you're going to tell a quick story about that. And it's not just us that is introducing ourselves. I see you, Jenna. Shout out to you on YouTube. I appreciate you for being here. If you are in the comment section, if you are watching this live, also let us know who you are and where you're coming from, right? Let us know in the chat. So who wants to kick it off?
Age before beauty. Go ahead, youngin. Go ahead, youngin.
What? Okay, Jano.
Slip that in there.
My name is Joan. My feet are planted in Connecticut, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. Was that it for the introduction part?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a poet.
You are,
and I'm a published poet. I know.
I was about to say, don't make me reach through
published poet. Jenna knows, right, Jenna? I'm a published poet.
But everybody else don't know. Come on. Get her, Jenna. Get her.
So I've been thinking a lot about this question, and I'm trying to determine, for me, the inner critic is the sort of implanting injection of that voice that's not mine. And I have to go way back to when I was younger, and I don't think my father meant to do this, but I was a very active, verbal, not shy young girl. And I had a lot of space to be able to share who I was because I was an only child for 6 years before my sister came along. And so I remember just wanting to share so much about what I was seeing in the world and my thoughts about it and who, this and that. And I remember engaging this older man who was in the backyard. So I grew up in England, and the backyard was where you could sort of see people, your neighbors. And I was just chatting with him about what this and that, who knows, run-on sentences and everything. And my father, I don't know if it was at the moment or afterwards, sort of just said, like, he's a busy man, you really shouldn't be bothering him. And really got me doing that meta look back at myself, because I thought I was just doing something quite normal and connecting. And what I saw from someone who I really needed to look up to, my father, was that I was doing something wrong. And so I think that's when the inner critic voice about I'm doing something wrong jumped into my brain. And then schooling as a Black woman in a white educational system that just got peeled every which way you looked. So that's when I think the inner critic really got a hold of me, and I've been battling it ever since.
And how old were you when this first happened?
Gosh, I must have been I was definitely less than 6, so young.
So that's super young
for
that seed to be planted, right?
Yeah.
Mary! Hi, Mary. Wait, what time is it where you are? What is happening? I just realized. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, that's super young. That's super, super young for that to start.
I mean, that's just what jumps into my brain. And again, some of it is the inner critic is me doubting a memory, right? It's doubting
Like, did that actually happen?
That
Like, you
actually
start
happened. Am I
questioning.
unfair in
Yeah,
my recollection?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, I'm sure we'll get to how we slay the inner critic, but that's
Oh, absolutely,
all stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much, Joan. Awesome, awesome. Jano.
Hello. My name is Jano. I'm in the Midwest, and I'm a storyteller. I do that mainly through being oral or by writing about other people. I have not written any fiction yet. It hasn't come. But I love just hearing people's stories and capturing that in the written word. I don't know. I hate it. I don't know if I love that. I just do it. And then people tell me I should love it. But okay, that's how it goes. The inner critic. I'm pretty sure that I was born with the inner critic. Through the blood of parents that came through Jim Crow, and there were things in my environment that made me alert and aware that we should be having an inner critic. For example, when adult Black people would start lowering their voices talking about white people, it's like, just trying to put that all together. But I had some kind of saving grace. I was so goofy that I didn't often pay attention to the inner critic. So some of the boundaries that was there, I would bolt right past them. The idea of my hair being all over my head and me chasing a baseball in the backyard, I didn't care that my hair was all over my head. But I had uncles who taught me, he told me that a girl should look like that. I'm like thinking, like, what? I look perfect.
You living free. You
Yeah.
out here.
Yeah, with dirt on my face and sweat, So the inner critic has been in and out, but I know for a fact that when I was born, the inner critic came with me through my mother's womb.
Here you go. Here you go. Just dropping the knowledge already. We're not even 15 minutes in, and Jano is over here talking about generational memory and trauma, and it's real. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think when we are little, we don't have the guardrails around us. And it's the adults, it's the people that are around us that set up those guardrails and tell us where we can and can't go, what we can and can't do. And then that begins to bleed into our writing, our creativity, and all the places in which we show up. So, yeah, that's so real. That is so real.
And I'd love for us to remember that too, just because pin that somewhere, because how are we going to break that inner critic curse?
Yeah.
When you say it, you're right. It does enter into the womb, and then it just sort of multiplies as it gets added onto by life experience as you grow. And you're right. The little kids, they're just living life large.
Yeah.
Free. And then someone says that thing where they're like, wait, this isn't,
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to, okay. And then there and compensating from there.
Yeah. Why are you laughing so loud?
Yeah.
Why is your butt so big? Why are your lips so large?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like kind of hanging out inside, along with other things. But I would often just bolt right past all that stuff. And I was been very fortunate and lucky that my goofiness didn't pay attention to a lot of the signs I was supposed to be paying attention to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But it's still there.
It's where being beautifully naive as a child paid off in that way where you didn't listen to other folks. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
How are you? It's so good to see you.
It's good to be here with all of you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Well, you came in right at the perfect time because we were going around the room and introducing ourselves. So we were saying our names, pronouns if you choose, where your feet are planted. And then we are remembering a time when our inner critic first appeared. in telling a quick story around that moment when the inner critic first appeared. So I'll give you a second to kind of sit with that and think about it a little bit. And while Catherine is finding that memory, you all, we are in conversation with you all today, right? I keep saying that, and I want to make sure that you all remember that this is a collective conversation that we're having, right? We are in community as we are unpacking all of the things that surround our inner critic, right? So we want to make sure that we are creating a space where you have the opportunity to get real, right? And it's going to require you all to be in conversation with us, right? So as you are joining us from whatever platform you're on, first of all, welcome. Thanks for being here, right? Join in on the conversation in the comment section. We see you. We want to let you know that we see you. So please let us know the first time your inner critic showed up that you can remember, and how that has shifted the way you move a little bit, maybe, right? Or any questions that you have for us as artists, as writers, that can help you break through and overcoming that voice of doubt that might live inside of you. And we're going to, really unpack that a lot more. But please take some time to be in the chat with us. So, Catherine, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So my name is Catherine. I go by the pronouns wahine, her, hers. I'm from the island of Hawaii. And as we offer and welcome, we say aloha kako, which is hello, everyone. If you take apart the word aloha, alo is presence and ha is breath. And so that speaks very much about the time that we're looking forward to spending with you this evening, is that we are present to each other as we are every morning, twice a week in the evening, and that we do share the breath of life. We share the breath of what it means to be women of color writers of all genres. And so when I think about the inner critic, I think it's a very interesting question. I think that given that my upcoming memoir is called Hush Stories, that inner critic, similar to what I came in as Jana was talking about, definitely emerged in childhood. That, I had lots of questions about why I was not allowed to speak Hawaiian. Why was I not allowed to speak Chinese? Why was I not sent to Chinese school? And the verbiage from my parents' generation was, or the quotes were just, you need to speak proper English. We basically don't want you to be foreignized. And, this whole idea of the conditioning that we grow up with that actually strips our culture away from us. And that it wasn't until years later that I fully understood. But I also was put down for my questions. I was told, you're too young to be asking these questions. But in reality, I was curious. I wasn't asking to be judged. I was asking because I really didn't understand that I was living on an island with all of these languages that I was told were part of my culture, but then somehow I wasn't allowed to speak them. And that the way it changed my life is that I fell in love with language. I fell in love with writing. I fell in love with the fact that no matter how old I was determined as I got older and learned the history of Hawaii, learned the history of my ancestors, those that came from China, that I wanted to then learn the language. I wanted to learn as much as I could, regardless of whether I became fluent or not. I wanted to learn the history. I wanted to learn the context. I wanted to learn how it was used. And to this day, that, for me, no matter how old I am, I will continue to be a learner of language, because once we strip away the language, we strip away the culture. Yeah, I said that.
Yeah, you did. You did. Welcome to the conversation, Catherine. You did it. Like, this happens every time. Once you strip away our language, you strip away our culture. And there's a moment in your memoir where you talk about, your elders and how they held on to their language, and that was one of the few things that they could hold on to when they came here. And so, yes, my goodness, nuggets already. I want to make sure that I am acknowledging what I am seeing in the chat as well. Thank you all so much for being a part of the conversation, right? And so, Cassie mentioned how the inner critics feel like you were being picked apart internally, right? Whew, that's that with me. because I think there is, given the examples that you all are talking about, being a 6-year-old, being a younger child and not really understanding, like you start to question why people are commenting about your hair or your body or telling you that you're asking too many questions. And then bit by bit, there is a stripping that occurs where just the scraping of our natural cells begins to get chipped away. And so I definitely see you, Cassie, in terms of that feeling of being picked apart internally, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how do we begin to maybe not necessarily pick up those same pieces, but pick up different pieces and begin to put them back together again in a way that is our new selves and a new way for us to be able to show up in space and be with one another so that we have that confidence to do so, right? I also want to acknowledge Lisa, who is in the chat, right? Thank you so much, Lisa, for being a part of the conversation. And Lisa mentioned my inner critic has made me feel like I was never enough or never smart enough or cool enough. I feel overlooked a lot in my childhood times, and it flowed over into my adulthood. Anybody else ever feel like things that happened in your childhood flowed over, right? Like, make sure you let Lisa know that she's seen and that she is not alone in that, right? Because I feel like we spend a lot of our times, we grow up and we spend so much time wanting to grow up. And then when we get here, we spend our time in our adulthood unpacking all the things that happened when we were children, and how honestly we're just big kids now, but we're big kids with big wounds. And then we are trying to process those wounds with the tools or without the tools, with community, without community, right? And so all of those pieces are there. Yes, yes. Ooh, yes, this right here. Catherine, as usual, dropped the mic on this statement right here. It's so wow. Wow. Can I share with you all a little bit, a little something, something? So I feel as if all the lives that we have been doing, we've had a lot of different conversations around, the journal that was released and the different sections that are in the journal. And I'm not always sure that people actually like know me, like know my story. And I feel like a lot of today is going to be about storytelling and sharing what we have gone through in a different way. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper so that y'all have the opportunity to see me, not necessarily as the writing coach or the CEO of Birds World, right? But as a person who also, as I am in community and being a guide for other writers, I also am not above any of the things that we are talking about, right? I show up as I am in space as well and be as honest as possible about where I am in the journey, and collectively we're able to work through that. But I do want to do like a little quick introduction that I think is a beautiful remedy to our own inner critic, right? And so I'm gonna do a thing that y'all always laugh at me for, but I do. Y'all see this bookshelf behind me? I'm not gonna not go to the bookshelf, right? Wait, I gotta find the book before I do the thing. Where'd it go? Where's the book? Oh, see,
It's
this
right
is
there. It's right there.
It is though. So hold on, be right back. It's funny because as soon as you said it's right there, it was there. So shout out to Lovey Ajayi Jones for the Professional Troublemaker, the Fear Fighter Manual. In the first chapter, Lovey talks about our arikis, right? And
Yeah.
I absolutely love the exercise that she gives us in this book, right? So an ariki is a Yoruba greeting, and ori means head, and ki meaning to greet or to praise, right? And so if you've ever watched Game of Thrones and how they introduce folks in Game of Thrones, they always have daughter of this and like the titles and all the things, right? And it makes you feel really grand as you walk into the room. What would it look like if you wrote your own Oriki, right? And sometimes when I'm having that voice of doubt that kicks in for me, I read my Oriki out loud. I like to call it my badass mantra, my badassery mantra, right? My hype mantra is another way to think about it, right? So for those of y'all who want to dive in a little bit deeper in who I am Heather Bird, House of Roberts, first of my name, giver of giggles and hugs, catalyst of voice, story, and badassery, queen of quirky, creator of legacy and possibilities, writer of inspiration and word witchery, believer of magic and rebirth, holder of sun and moon, high priestess of hummingbirds, winner of awards, lover of tacos, bubbles, bubble tea, and just tea, right? Defier of gravity and language, and spreader of wings and dreams, right? I am also a published author of in several anthologies like Troubled Water and Hope Ignited and Expressions of Inglewood. And I published my first chapbook back in 2016 called Mahogany, A Love Letter to Black, and most recently released my journal, Igniting Ink, right? So I have all of these things that have been going on around me. And I'm also an international award-winning writer and the recipient of the 2022 Anthem Award, along with big names like Google and BBC and National Geographic and Netflix and HBO Max and The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, which I saw that and I was like, woohoo, all right, mama done made it, right? But I honestly, with all of that, sometimes is bragging, and not in a way where I see myself above others, right? But that inner critic, that voice of doubt start to kick in, right? And so I remember a time, it was February of 35, and I read a message that came through my text messages that said, great news. And everything shifted for me because I was being awarded something that I didn't even know was possible for work that I did on this magazine that I produced, right? And I had about 20 different magazines that I had a chance to hold in my hands. I was at my mom's house and I was sitting on the couch and I was bouncing off the walls, right? And it was the first time I had ever curated and edited a magazine that featured 19 different voices of people of color in this magazine before, right? And I also remembered saying, when they came to me and they first wanted me to do this magazine, and I was bouncing off the walls. Y'all know me. If y'all do know me, or if you don't know me, I love happy dances, right? So I'm bouncing off the walls, literally doing a happy dance. And then the adrenaline started to wear off. And I realized that reality started to sink in, that I said yes to something that I had never done before. And yes, I had already helped hundreds of people already write their stories through poetry and through books and things of that nature, right? Something. And now my inner critic was like, you're not safe anymore. We're going to knock on your shoulder, right? And I remember when it came time for me to write the featured article that I froze. I remember me not being able to think straight. I remember picking up the pen and my hand shaking. I would tell myself this over and over and over again, and that they came to me for a reason to do this. But on certain days, it honestly wasn't enough. And there were times full of fear, concerned about whether or not my work would be received well, whether or not I would be considered a fraud, whether or not I'd be doing a good job, whether or not people fall of anxiety and having to call my partner in rhyme to help talk me off of the ledge, right? So I want to ask you all in the comment section, and the folks that are here, has there ever been a time when you experienced your inner critic getting the best of you, right? And if you have experienced that, you can either raise your hand if you're on screen or type me in the chat to let me know, at least on your inner critic is like gnawing at you. It's like what Cassie said earlier. It starts chipping at you, and then you start to believe that you are no longer whole. So I want to be really honest with the folks that are watching, and I want to turn the question back onto the group, right? What are some things that your inner critic has told you all? What are some of the thoughts?
You know, for me, it is nobody cares.
Mm.
Nobody cares what you have to write. You're not that special.
Mm.
You're not as good as. So there's a level of high level who's doing it better.
Mm. Mm.
So that's it. And it's a very loud voice of you. Nobody, if you write stuff down, yeah, you might thought that was good when you wrote it, but they're not going like that. It's not enough.
Yeah. 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 If anybody else has felt that way, chat, right? If you've ever felt that way, if that thought has ever creeped into your mind, yeah.
What do y'all think?
Well, for me, I hear this. If you do that, you're gonna be up in front. And you know you can't be up in front. You scared. You know how scared and shy you are. Be up in front.
People can see you.
Yeah. But then what? You're gonna be up in front, you're gonna have gum on your shoe, and you're gonna start stuttering because you're so nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody else has that thought of being up in front of people when something is done, oof. Please let Jen know in the chat. Of course.
I believe now more than ever, I can do the work. I can do the whatever it is. The scariest thing for me is being up in front.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Being
it.
right center.
For me. Like once I'm up front and center, I'm my little girl likes to play. Like I can do that. It's the front and center.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
I see you on mute, Catherine. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
No. I mean, I resonate with all this because I think that it's unapologetically myself now, because I think not good enough, or that you're not fitting into the model minority myth mold, that you're too outspoken, that always infuse youth voice into every single piece of work that I do. That is why I would say to my graduate assistants, I'm not perfect, and we need to be in a space where we actually learn together, that these hierarchies of learning is a hierarchy. And so even within these small islands of work that we do together, and that my hope is that then that would have a ripple effect when they left the college, when they went into their differently. And so, I think it's how do we listen to that inner critic within a larger system? Because again, this idea in collaboration with each other, the more that we are not, we can be pulled, and we are much more powerful as a collective. And that's when you get reorganized. That's when your budgets get cut. And what's so very powerful about our group is that we created an image that using someone else's framework. We're not using someone else's mold. We're not having someone else tell us what to do. Mornings, as we welcomed a new member, that this is a space that long you have been here or not. This is not a clique. It's a writing space. It's a community space. And it's a space that all of us have said at one time or another does not exist in any other parts of our lives.
Absolutely.
To this extent.
Right.
The Pam had said something earlier in the comments I noticed about how we don't interrogate the inner voice. We take it as truth. Oof. And I've been sitting with that. Just be like, we don't check the accuracy. And wow.
And that's, yes, I think that's what the group does. That's what the group does. Because when I love this idea of not fact checking what the inner critic is telling us, because there have been several times where I have been just flat out honest with you all, showed up in the morning and told y'all something, and it's partially my fault because I do the same thing to y'all, right? But then you're like, and we're going to turn the mirror onto you and remind you of the things that you have done, how you've shown up for the group, how you have transformed our lives, how, you know, Catherine might have a moment and we're like, do you realize how many bombs you've dropped? Like how many gems have you dropped? How many times have you said, oh, I said that, right? How many questions, Jano, have you asked us that has carried us through our entire week and made us rethink everything that we have ever done, right? Joan, how many times have you shown up and given us language for something that we've always wanted? How many times have you shown up in joy and allowed us to share that joy with you all? So when we come to the space, and y'all make fun of me when I do this, when I say I'm stuck, right? It might be because we're in a critic. It might be because of just a regular challenge that I'm having in my writing. Collectively, we get to point out the things that we are missing, and we get to challenge the accuracy of what we are telling ourselves instead of sitting in a space and being in it by ourselves and just wallowing in it for a while, right? Oof, sorry, I just
that wraps up what you were saying around hierarchy of learning. And I realized that I was born into a system that wasn't designed for my greatness. And so I had to work myself out of it to find this group where I can be in a space of memory and then letting that memory become my creativity. Because there's so many moments we're just having a conversation and all of a sudden one of us will say something. I'm like, oop, got to take that to the page. Right? Like, and so that's the school. If we had been in this kind of schooling where there was no hierarchy, where the teacher broke down competition, where there was collaboration, where there was uplift, where there was all of the things that we do. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's so much, and there's so much in this chat, y'all. Like y'all are really, really showing up, right? And I, thinking about reasons why we don't show up. Like people will attack me again. I genuinely want to hold you in this moment. We what do we say? We are our own bodyguards here, right? We show up for each and every person that needs our assistance in whatever way we could possibly hold you in that moment, right? And so not allowing the fear of others take hold of us in a way so that our brilliance is locked away. So that the people who need to see our message, need to be in movement with us, still have the opportunity to do that and be in community to do so, right? Oof, I see you. You are not alone, right? Words escaping us when we speak publicly. I always envision and have physically done before. And I saw this for you, Jano, because we've told you over and over again what you do for us. And I just see you being front and center and us physically or metaphorically holding your hand. So that all eyes don't have to be on you. They could be on the collective. You're
Wow.
speaking, you transforming, but we are holding your hand as you do so that you are not alone, right? What are the ways we can break the mold
Mm-hmm.
so that voice out don't exist anymore?
It's funny that you said that, because when someone else put their message up and I read it, I thought about how this group is like taking people's hands, like, come on, girl. and it's just like that. Come on.
It's like they'll pull you right into the next room.
Yeah.
I'll pull you into the circle, right?
And it's not even a pull. I think it is a guide, right?
Yeah.
It's a guiding, because it's not like we are bringing folks in that do not want to be here, right? There is this calling, this hum. Shout out to Sky Full of Elephants, right?
Ooh.
There's this hum, there's this vibration that exists, that when we have even the smallest of conversations, right? Joke around a lot, right? Of how Jana and I met. Like, we literally met on the street because of a mutual friend, right? And it was a vibration, it was a hum, it was a knowing, where Jana was like, I'll be there tomorrow, right? Like, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna show up, right? And there's this calling that exists, that I think that we are able to produce in a way where others have that opportunity to be seen. And I always say, when we hum, we always open up our sessions, right, with that groundingness, that hum that exists. And part of that humming is to ground ourselves. The other part of the humming is to be able to send love and break up pieces that no longer belong in your body. It's to recalibrate ourselves in a way that's necessary for us to show up in our writing in the most authentic way possible. So I want us all to do something really quickly, because we're talking about a lot of things that have come up for us when we were younger, a lot of things that we have held, a lot of things that we've had to pivot. And I don't know how often we also give ourselves grace. So I want to create the opportunity for us to just forgive ourselves for having these moments of being afraid to step up on stage, to have the moments where our voice might have cracked and we might have stuttered, forgiving ourselves for allowing others to be able to chip away at who we are as people, therefore it then showing up in our writing, right? So if you all would like to join us in this forgiveness, please type in I forgive myself in the chat, right? We need to create space to begin the unlearning, to begin the unpacking, to begin the interrogation, and it starts with that grace for ourselves. So if you are still here with us, please type in I forgive myself. And if you want to type in what you forgive yourself for, we can type that in as well. Would anyone want to share what they forgive themselves for? I see you, Lisa. I'll kick off. Well, Lisa kicked us off. I'll go next. I forgive myself for doubting my badassery.
I forgive myself for backing away from my greatness. I
Mm.
knew how great I was at 5. There was no doubt. It was like, look, I got stuff. Let's go. I was like, what? You want more? Here. But I have to forgive myself for then stepping back and then, holding back.
Yeah.
I forgive myself for feeling that, or not for feeling, I forgive myself that I kept my writing so far on the side that it didn't feel that it could come up to the front. Because I was taking care of everyone else ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Pam said on Instagram, I forgive myself for playing small. Ooh, Cassie.
Whew, I take a breath on that one.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm. Let's start with forgiveness.
And it's not lost on me that so many of us are female identified. We show up and we immediately have to apologize for our identity and our presence.
Mm.
And we have to spend the rest of our life saying, no, 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 sorry, I didn't mean I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean to say, you're welcome.
Yeah. 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 And one of the reasons why you want to be able to forgive yourself is because our inner critics do serve a purpose. Sometimes we might take it out of context. Sometimes we are putting too much validity, like it was said earlier, right, into what's being said. But our inner critic really does serve as a protective mechanism, right? It's the part of our brain that tries to shield us from any risk or any failure, any hurt, any judgments, right? Any harm that might be caused, right? It's a way for us to be able to protect ourselves. And so to start off with forgiving ourselves is a part of that is being able to say, I was protecting myself, right? So it is okay to have these thoughts because they're going to happen, right? The thing with it is, how do we begin to validate or invalidate the thoughts that we're having quicker, right? How do we say, oh, I'm having this thought? Nope, I'm a badass, right? Like, nope, I have what it takes, right? Nope, this is what this is what is necessary for me to grow and for me to do, right? These are the things that I need to do in order to move past it. Like, how do we be able to bring these things to a community sooner, right?
Right.
So our inner critic helps us to avoid discomfort. And at the same time, sometimes it just holds us back completely. So what we want to be able to do is unpack and, Joan, your favorite word, interrogate, right? Your inner critic
Mhm.
and figure out where it came from and begin to reframe and put it in context so that you really truly understand the root cause of the thoughts that you are having and the effect that it's had on you. Because the voice is never going to go away, but it can be managed. It can be extinguished to a certain extent, especially if you have the right people around you, right? So, really quickly, one of Catherine's favorite things that I talk about is procrastination and the way and the framing of procrastination, and how that plays a part in our own artistic and writing journeys, right? So, we're talking about this inner critic that sits on our shoulder, our forehead, our chest, wherever it sits on our body, right? And technically, it's there to protect us. We are moving through that and we're beginning to forgive ourselves for all of the things that we have said to ourselves that made us less than who we actually are, that allowed us to sit in the background when we really need to be in the front, right? When the inner critic creeps in, procrastination set in. Anybody else procrastinate on any other projects? Like, right? Like, sometimes you know you need to be doing something, but you don't do it just yet. So I want to provide just a quick reframe of procrastination. We all know that when we think about procrastination, we know that sometimes it stops you from achieving your goals because you're sitting back and you're allowing the inner critic to kick in. We also know that it diminishes your confidence, right? Because if you don't actually complete the thing that you said you were going to do, you don't get to see the end product, which means you don't get your gold star. Like, we get excited when we're 5 years old and we get that gold sparkly star or whatever on the little chart that they have. We're adults and we still want our gold star, right? It also limits your imagination because the less that you practice or are in practice and having healthy habits, the less you are able to really dive into your imagination and to write. And ultimately, you stop trusting and believing in yourself and your own capabilities. But what if we started to think about procrastination a little bit differently, right? What if we started to think about Procrastination only exists or only occurs when we really want something that we have never embarked on before. Like we're coming up on this ledge and we don't know if we can fly. But when you actually go through all of your receipts, you know that once you leap, your wings will appear. You know it's possible, right? It reminds you that your goal is greater than anything you've ever thought of before. And it lets you know that you just need the help in order to do it. You need a community in order to have that sink in, right? And procrastination is a sign that you just need to sit and say, I'm stuck. Right?
I love it. I'm stuck.
Like, what if we just went around and asked for help in that way and said, I'm stuck. I don't know how to write my first word. Or my inner critic told me, or my teacher told me when I was in 4th grade that I would never be a good writer. And I've held on to that for my entire life. Right? What if we use our voice to actually overcome doubt? The voice of doubt is here, but this voice is louder. The community is going to be louder than the voice of doubt that you have. And Catherine, you always talk about imposturing. Could you just like lay that nugget on us as we are having this conversation and how this plays a part in the procrastination and the inner critic that sits on our shoulder or somewhere on our body?
Happy to. You know, I think for me, language has so much to do with around the way that we use it. So this came out of, I actually don't say the word minority because I think it simply serves as a descriptor. I say that, you know, as women of color, particularly on this journey, that we're minoritized, or that our young people are being minoritized in schools when their curriculum is not reflective of their lived experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think the same for imposter syndrome, that the syndrome then is a description of us, but we're not the ones that are being impostered. Like the idea of we're being, the imposturing is because the system is telling us that we don't matter. The system is telling us that we need to perform a certain way, behave a certain way, which in and of itself is framed in the dominant culture of white supremacy. And so by shifting that away, where we're not then assuming the blame of being an imposter, but really understand that impostering is what happens to us, then allows us to then take a reframe about then what can our actions be, and that we should not be working at this in isolation, because that's exactly what the system wants, is that isolation is what causes us to think that we're procrastinating. Isolation is what causes us to think that we're an imposter. But when we're in a collective, when we're in the midst of a strength of women of color that are upholding us with every word that we say, with every question that we ask, then there becomes very little room for that inner critic to emerge in a way that becomes destructive.
Mm-hmm. All of that.
All of it.
And the part about I'm stuck that has really resonated for me has been I've not given myself permission to ask for help.
Yes.
So the imposturing aspect from me has been, I should know this. And I'm going to struggle over here because I've been told that that's the way to move through not knowing something. I'm going to struggle over here until I get it, which then I exhaust myself, or then I back away and then I procrastinate because it's something I believe I'm not good at and I have to be good at. And what I'm learning from I'm stuck is there's an initial tug in my belly when I say it, but then the beauty of being helped, like, and it's just a little bit encouragement, and it's like this nectar of encouragement, and you got this. Oh, it's just this little bit right over here, or here's a reframe. Whatever it may be, it's then a release, and then I'm free. Because before I was stuck, and now I'm free. So I'm adopting that more and more in my professional space, which is to not hold on so long to being stuck, to ask for help, not see that as any kind of indictment for my character, for my skills, for my badassery, none of it. So I appreciate that I'm stuck, and like in that playful way too. Oh,
I'm stuck. Have fun, right? With whatever it is that you're doing, there should be fun that surrounds it, right? So Joan, you were holding on to a question. I don't know if you remember what that was. You said you wanted us to be able to circle back to it as we were talking about where our inner critics, started within us. If you remember that question, please let us know. Also in the chat, if you all have questions for us in terms of how are we able to move through that inner critic as we are writing, or whatever sort of question you have about our process, please dive in and let us know in the chat. But Joan?
I was just noticing how all of us were talking about young age infiltration of that voice that didn't belong to us. And I'm wondering, my question to everybody is, if you could write that younger self now or have a conversation with that younger self now, what would you say to your younger self?
That got me right here. Okay. So I think mine is a little different, because I think that I live somewhat in a Jano world where my ignorance to others around me in terms of how they perceived me, I didn't care as much. Like my peers somewhat, but like when it came to the adults and they're like, oh, you can't do that because you're this, or you can't do that, and I would go, watch me. And I would literally like proceed. And so mine didn't start to kick in until I was older. Mine didn't kick in until about 10 years ago, which is very interesting. That's a whole nother conversation that we can have. And it was because the comparison game began to kick in for me. And so I think what I would say to a younger me that was older, but younger than what I am now, if I were to say 10 years ago to myself, is that how I show up is just as good, if not better. Actually, no, I would switch that. I would say how I show up is magic. The other ways of saying it is a comparison, right? And so reminding myself of how I show up, the recipe and the way in which I show up is magic.
Got it. Facts. What would you tell yourselves, Catherine or Jana? What would you tell your younger self, or even yourself of yesterday?
That's younger.
I would tell my younger self that, contradictions are going to be a part of how you walk and exist in this world. That, I can be both, as an Asian American Pacific Islander, I can be both hypervisible and invisible, literally in the same meeting, depending on whose perspective is being placed upon me. And that, regardless of that contradiction, that I can still move in the world, that I can still be successful, that I can still manifest and dream. Because I think, again, that we walk in a world that we have to choose to be either or, and that contradictions end up being called conflicts, versus the fact that they're the contradictions that are placed on us. But how to then, how do you sit in your own skin and be comfortable with who you are? How do you, how do I now say, I am an author, and I am stepping into that identity that it's always been in me, but it has always been in the background, and now it is front and center.
Yes. Oof. I love this from Cassie. Cassie said, I write my younger self all the time. That's my girl. I love hearing about our growth.
Yeah.
Cassie.
Jana?
There's a part of me that's still snagged on the nail on the fence. Like I hopped over the fence, I was like, whoa, not so fast. And this group has really been healing for me because as a kid, I was called a tomboy, and as an adult, as a young adult, and people ascribe things to me that that's what they ascribed to me, and I didn't know anything about. I didn't know what was going on. I was just being myself. But as a woman who loves women, I haven't always, but I'm trying to find my way in the skin that I was born in. And it's been very interesting and unique. And because I moved through the world the way I moved through the world, I've been blamed for things that I never even thought about. It's kind of kept me often being very shy about being around people or women, or like for part of it was that, will they be able to see that I'm in a costume, for one. Like the other part is that, will they blame me for thinking of things I've never even thought about? I'm a kid, And so I got a lot of stuff. And so I was just trying to tip along the side of the wall, and just trying to, so before you know it, I'm 30, and I'm still trying to be invisible in some ways, so that I won't get blamed or accused of things that was neither. So I'm not sure what I would tell my younger self, because I'm kind of just getting through from my younger self. And I don't know how a person would explain all that to me about what I was feeling and thinking and having to deflect and duck away from. And, so I'm going to continue to think about that.
And it's an ongoing journey, right? It's not one of those moments where something clicked and it was all fixed.
Right. But one of the good things about being with this group is that I can just be myself. I don't have to worry about will I get accused of something. And it feels really good. It feels, I can't even tell you how good it feels.
Well, you can show up as the you that you are.
Right. And there's a part of me that I couldn't see before. I couldn't let her out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a part of you, and all of us, right? There's a part of you in this specific example, but I think there's a part of us that gets to be celebrated in a way that hasn't been celebrated before. We have literal pom-poms. Like there are literal pom-poms that exist for us, right? And so for you specifically, there are pieces of you that you haven't been able to let out, but I also believe that there are pieces of you that you haven't even begun to see. Because you haven't been able to show up as yourself.
Yeah, that's
to celebrate you.
That's it, exactly. As a kid, I remember running down the street or walking down the street, and adults would say things to me that you shouldn't say to a kid. And so I would had a little bit of confusion, but I just tried to stay out of the reach of those kind of comments and those kind of people.
The protection. Yeah. I always say that in this space, we do things in community, and we also are transforming on the page and in person. The person, the human side of us informs the writing, allows us to show up as our full self so that our voice can show up on the page. Right. Joe, you want to answer that question before we pose a last question that was posted in the chat for us?
Me?
Yeah. What would you tell your younger self?
I thought I said. I guess I would tell her, like, I got you. I got your back.
Right.
I've got your back. And it's like what Cassie said. Look, when I have your back, then look at how much we grow.
I have a question, though. I'm really curious about how many people on the screen and how many people who are listening to us call themselves a writer or the artist that they are, whatever art form you take. How many times have you said that to someone today? I am a writer. I have to go home and do some writing. I got to go home and work on my vocalizations. Have you all called yourselves a writer lately or at all?
It's a great question. That's a really great question.
I did
I
used
got
to.
to introduce myself as a poet today, like outside of this live, right? Where it's like the thing that I do to introduce myself. When I was in a separate space in a high school today.
Mhm.
And so
Wow.
had the opportunity to introduce myself as a poet and a
Mhm.
writer.
Mhm.
And it felt really good.
Wow.
I didn't used to before the space. I used to just say I journal.
Yeah, you did. And not only a writer, but a what?
A published
Published.
poet.
It
I
feels
mean,
good.
yeah, and I want to kind of weave in an answer to Lisa's question about how do you let your badass self come through? How do you find your badass self? And I think it's twofold. It's being in community so that you're not left in the dark spaces in your head, because that's a dark place to go alone. But it's also, once you're in community, you can then have this the different resources like the oriki, writing your own oriki. There's like having, I love to dance, so Heather's given me, and I found myself my own playlist of badass music that I can play. And it's just, you play that and you just stand up and just dance it out and let your body feel it, and then my brain catches up. And then it builds on itself, like you said, with the sort of inner critic is trying to take you away from that other voice. So Lisa, there's lots of different ways, and I think for me, being in community, I was given to see which one fit, and every moment requires a different resource.
That that right there. Every moment requires a different resource. So there's not a one size fits all. Even for like the person itself, like each instance requires its own. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
What I sometimes do to quiet the inner critic is, because again, doing the work that we do, doing the writing that we do, that, being racelit and gaslit is unfortunately the norm. But I think that quieting that inner critic is realizing that though it might be happening to me, it's not about me. And really sort of having a deeper understanding of the system and being able to put that in its context. And then finding groups that are both going to push me to my growing edge, but uplift me at the same time. Because you can get pushed to your growing edge and pushed off the cliff, or you can get pushed to your growing edge where together, sort of in community, that we are breaking those glass ceilings, those thatch roofs, those, whatever they are, right? Like, what's being imposed in us doesn't need to stay on us. And I think that, what does it mean for us to redefine or really reimagine our identities as writers, our identities as, what it means. We've been having conversations in our group about what does it mean to get older, and we're an intergenerational group, so we have folks in their 30s and we have folks in their 60s and in their 70s, and we celebrate birthdays, and there's milestones in those birthdays, and there's conversations from anything about, from being perimenopausal to having completed menopause to being assumed that you should be retired because you're of a certain age. But who the heck said that at a certain age, that as a woman of color, that you're supposed to be retired and eating bonbons? No. So, if one more person asks me, my response continues to be, the world is on fire right now, and there is no way in blah, 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 swear, that I am going to stop the advocacy and activism, which is my life's work, right? Like how we get to define work is very different, that our work is not just JOBs. It really is our life's work. And that is the way my badassery comes through, is that as I've gotten older, I've become completely and utterly unapologetic. You take me as I am, job or no, basically however you see my job is.
Yeah. Oof. Catherine. One of the ways that I work to quiet my inner critic is I have a list of either comments from social media, text messages, I have speeches, I have favorite songs that I listen to. And I also have a list of things that I have accomplished, all the way from I learned how to walk. It doesn't have to be award winning. Like every milestone is huge. I chose me in a situation, right? That is something that I am proud of, that I get to own, that I get to sit in, right? I wrote my first word, right? I published my first book. I danced my first dance after my knee surgery. Like I have a list of all of my accomplishments, no matter how big or how small. And I go back to that and I remind myself of that, right? I got the opportunity to be the guardian for my nephew for like 18 months and he's still alive. Like I was a parent, right? And I had to make choices, not only for him, but for myself, right? That's an accomplishment. That makes me feel good. So I get to look at all the things that I have accomplished. And then that gets to remind me of my badassery. And that inner critic, slowly but surely, is quieted. And then it's like a whisper. Whereas everything else is a cheer. Everything else is a dance. Everything else is louder and bigger and allows me to really stand in my light in that way. Right? So make a list of all the things you've accomplished, all the way from I learned to take my first step to I learned how to talk, or I found my favorite food that makes me happy, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, find the thing. Start from very, very small all the way to now. And take a look at that list when you're feeling down on yourself. But also, you can also find a community and say, I'm stuck. And we'll
Well,
remind you. We'll remind you how great you are.
The looking back on all of the accomplishments, there's also sometimes other people are a good mirror for us. So a good friend or a family member, like a coach once told me, send a list out to people and BCC, but send the email that says, what is it about me that you've seen me in operation? What is it about me that you think I do well?
Mm-hmm.
And when those came back, I actually couldn't refute those.
Yep.
So that I put that in my appreciation file, and that's also you reminding me I need to go back to it because I shouldn't wait until I'm really, really stuck. It's something I need to make a habit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Whew. Y'all. Jano, you're muted. The mute button gets us every time.
Yeah, I was going to mention something that I'm grateful that I've lived long enough to enjoy the technological age that we're in right now. And I'm not a fan of hip hop or rap, but one thing that genre did bring about for all of us is to know that it takes less talent and more nerve. I mean, like for example, I had to look part of this up. To the window, to the wall, to the sweat runs down my, you know what I'm saying? This is a song. This was a song. Somebody wrote this song. Do you think they thought about Shakespeare when I was writing that song? Probably not. Not even James Baldwin. They were thinking about making some money and going in the studio. I'm in the studio, man. I mean, it's right here for the asking. It's right here. The gift is there. Open it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody here. Everybody. The gift is right here. Open it.
Yeah.
It's our turn.
Yeah. It's our turn. Absolutely. Oof. Yeah, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I want to remind you, like, Here's the thing. We all have to push ourselves to a certain extent. And the story that I was telling you all earlier about me saying yes to a project that then moved me into this international award winning status, right? That put me on these platforms, right? I needed to be on the edge in order for that to happen. I needed to be a little uncomfortable. Yes, my brain was trying to protect me, but I had to say yes to something new, which meant I had to be a little uncomfortable. I had to trust that everything that I had learned up until that point, the list that I had been making, right? The experiences that I had all led me to this new space. And I had to change the way I was looking at the situation and really believe that the community that I had built around me could help put me in that right place, right? That was preparing me for a success. So I not only want to thank you all for being in this conversation with us, because it's not easy for us to talk about our fears and talk about the doubts and the things that we say to ourselves or hear other people say on repeat, right? And so there was an opportunity for you all to join us in that vulnerability. And I want to thank you all so much who commented in the chat, who was honest with yourself. I want to thank you all for forgiving yourself. And I also want to let you know that it does not have to stop tonight, right? You don't have to leave this live and not have this feeling of freedom, have this feeling of being seen, right? And you have the opportunity to continue to say, I'm stuck, right? And have a group of people be by your side in this way. And so I would be remiss if I did not invite you to continue this conversation to help move you through any of the challenges that you all have. And we've been talking about the spaces that we've been in. And for those of y'all who've been on previous lives, you've heard us talk about our writing spaces that we started off as a 2-month experiment back in January of 2023, and we are almost at 2 years of running this space. And so if you're someone who identifies as a woman of color, we have space for you to show up as you are in your bonnets, your robes, your rollers, your hat, your bad breath, all of it. We can't smell it. We on Zoom, right? But you have the opportunity to show up as you are, right? And we meet literally as you are, bonnet hanging off your head, crud in your eyes, all of it, like guilty, right? But we meet every weekday, Monday through Friday, from 6:30 a.m. Central Time to 7 o'clock a.m., where we write collectively on Zoom. We roll out of the bed and we have the opportunity to dedicate time to ourselves before the rest of the world gets a hold of us. We have the opportunity to write towards our projects that we are working on so that our words, our movements have the opportunity to flourish and to live in the world, and for folks to be able to hold your book in your hand, right? We create space for that. In the mornings, Monday through Friday, from 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. Central, and then from 7 o'clock to until there is community conversation that takes place. So I usually say from 7 to 7:30, we have our community conversations, and that is an organic space for us to either work through a challenge that we have in our writing, or just to talk about the ways in which we show up in the world, or the questions that are burning inside of us that we have been dying to have conversation around. That is the space where we get to do that, right? So you might be saying, Heather, I'm not a morning person. Guess what? Neither am I. But I did it for 22 months, y'all. I did it.
You did.
And so if you're not a morning person, and or you are a principal or a teacher or a librarian, and you start school at 7:30 in the morning, or you have little kids or just kids in general that you have to send off to school, you have some sort of priority in the morning. It might be working out in the morning, and mornings just don't work out for you. We have had the beautiful opportunity to expand our space into the evenings. And so on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., we write together in those spaces. And that's an opportunity for you to release your day release what has happened in your day and do some writing around that, but then also do writing around your projects. So if you have thought about what it would look like for you to be in community with others, to write your story so that you have the opportunity to share your knowledge, your expertise, your lessons with the world, this is definitely the space to do so. And you get to do it in community with other people who are also on that journey with you all. So I definitely wanted to be able to invite you to that space. Or if you're like, I don't even know what I need to write about just yet. I don't even know if I am a writer. I'm just here to support others. You could dive into Igniting Ink so that you can find the stories that you need to start writing your book. So make sure we're going to drop the link in the chat for Igniting Ink in there. I think
it's in there. Cassie just
it's
put it
in
in.
there. Cool. Cassie, shout out to Cassie, y'all, who has been in the chat and been in community with us. So make sure you get your copy of Igniting Ink, either for yourself or someone else that you know who has been talking about maybe writing the book for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and hasn't started yet. We are the space to help you to do that. So I thank you all again so much. Any last words of wisdom that you all have? Any more mic drops before we hop on off and say goodnight to the people?
I love Janos.
Right.
The gift is here. Open it. That
I would
is
say,
really.
to compliment that, I would say step off that struggle bus.
Struggle bus.
Struggle bus.
Can't, I won't. You know, I don't know. No, I can't.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
It's your time. It's our time.
Yeah.
It is our time.
Yeah.
And you get to do it with other people. So I thank you all so much again for being here. Thank you for sharing your stories, for being honest with us. If you're ever watching this and you're watching it on the replay, let us know that you are watching it on the replay. We come back to the comments. We are still in conversation with you all. If there is someone who missed this opportunity to have this conversation, feel free to tag them in here so they could be a part of it. And I want to let you know that I see you all. You are not alone. I believe each and every one of you all have at least 3 to 5 stories that live within you. Step off the struggle bus. I believe that we all have at least 3 to 5 stories that live within us. So why not get started today? So until next time, we go live every last Tuesday of the month to be able to have conversations like this with you all. If y'all have any questions, let us know in the chat or DM us. And until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and as always, keep flying, y'all. Bye.